The upcoming lesson is going to walk you through how you can create a basic website template that's going to have a responsive navigation bar, and this is all going to be done just with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, providing all of the functionality and doing the styling there. So we've got a basic web page layout, got some JavaScript for that event interaction, and the styling in order to style the different sizes and the styling for the navigation and for the web page. Go ahead and open up your editor. In this case, I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code, and this is a free open source editor that you can use, and it also has a live preview. So there's a live server extension that I'm also going to be making use of, and that's going to allow me to output the page in real time within the browser. So in order to add the live server, you can go under the settings and extensions and then select the live server. I already do have it installed, and that allows me to click on my HTML page and open with live server, and there's also some other extensions that allow you to do that. So go ahead and create your index.html. I've got the index.html rendered out on the right hand side, and now let's go ahead and we're going to add in some code. So starting with the doc type. So the doc type is what specifies the declaration specifying the document is going to be an HTML document. And then within the doc type, we're going to select the HTML tags and set up the head tags. And within head, we add in a title. So this is just going to be a test page with a NavBar that's going to be responsive. So go ahead and add in a title that just makes sense. You can also set the meta character set within the head as well. So setting it up as meta tags, and then we specify the character set as UTF-8. So it's going to give the character type there within the properties. And we're also going to add in the style tags, and then we can move them within a style sheet afterwards. Next, set up the body of the HTML page, and we're going to do the same for script. So we're going to add in the script tags directly within the page and then update them afterwards to provide all of the functionality. So let's set up our basic HTML code where we've got just a basic web page, which is going to have a header area, and that's going to be where our navigation bar is going to sit. So use the NavBar HTML element, and then we can set up a div within there. And if you want it to have a logo, so let's just give this a class of logo so that we can select and identify it. And this is, so typically with the logo, you might have a hyperlink there. So we're just going to href, we'll use a placeholder hash for the hyperlink, and then close off the anchor tags and set the logo. So once you save that, you can see that the page now has the HTML link for logo, and you don't always have to add in a logo, but in this case we'll apply the styling to it as well. Let's select the rest of the menu there, and this is the menu that's going to be nav. It's going to be our navigation menu, and it's going to be fully responsive, so we want to set up the toggle options. So what that means is it's going to look different on the smaller screens as opposed to the larger screens, and we're going to handle all of that within the styling. So we want to set up a bar there. So we're setting an input type, and we're going to set this as a check box. So this will allow us to toggle the bar open and closed and select a class, and I'm going to give it a class of bar. And we're going to be doing quite a bit of this stuff with the styling. And within the bar, we're going to add in some spans. So to give it that icon look where we've got the expandable menu option. So selecting and adding in the spans. Now these are just blank spans, and we've got the checkbox. And a lot of this is just going to be coming out as plain HTML, and then we're going to make some updates to it and apply the styling and to make it look like an actual navigation bar. So once we've set that up, now we can set up the actual menu. We're going to use an unordered list for the menu. So give it a class again so that we can identify it. I'll just give it a class of menu. And a lot of this is going to be done within the styling. So we've got some list items there. And then this is where you can link out and list out all of your links. So I'm going to be just using placeholders for the links, just including a hash. And so we typically would have a home page. Let's add in several other links here. and we'll add in 4 links there. And then you can update these to actual pages afterwards. So it doesn't matter. This is just so that you have a template that you can use. And this is going to be the menu bar at the top. So we've got the services and then the contact. So these would be typical 4 pages for a website, and that's our navigation bar. So now let's go on to where we've got the main area. So we're going to use a main page element for that and set that up with an H2 and write welcome to our website. And then of course you can add in whatever content you want here. And then so this is just some lorem ipsum content, and that can just be whatever content that you have within the page. So this is just going to be a single column for the main area, and then at the bottom we're going to have our footer area. And then you can add in additional columns and style it as needed later on. So within the footer we'll just have a paragraph, and that paragraph is going to contain the copyright symbol. So it's with ampersand and copy, which is going to provide that copyright symbol. And we can write a year, website, company design, or whatever your company design is, whatever you want to have within the footer. So that's our basic content that we're going to have for the web page. And now it's going to be coming to the styling of the content. So we want to make it look more like a website, and this is where we're going to add in the responsive part. Also within the meta, let's set the viewport. So the viewport is just going to be width equals device width and initial scale 1. So that's setting the viewport of the web page. And the viewport is a meta tag. It's used in HTML documents to control the layout and behavior of the web page. So typically it includes a width and initial scale properties. So the width is a property that sets the viewport width screen, and initial scale is the scale of the initial zoom level of the page. And so typically this is just a standard default that we would set it to. And this is for the mobile devices, and so that it scales better. And it's crucial for mobile friendly and for responsive web pages. So you should be including that within those. So let's go back down and update what we have for our main area, and selecting the main class, or we'll just collect the main tag actually, because we only just have the one main tag. And then we can add some padding around there. So we're going to set up some padding of 20 pixels around main. And then for footer, so if you are using more than one footer tag, then make sure that you do identify it and be more specific with it. So we're going to set up a typical grayish scale color for that, and we'll set the font color to be white. And then add in some padding for this one too. And then text align. So a lot of times you'll see that the text is aligned to center. So that gives us our footer, that gives us our main content. And now all we have left is to update the navigation bar. So let's start working on the navigation bar. And we'll selecting out the elements that we set there. So we did have a bar. So right off the bat, what we want to do is we want to hide the bar. So we want to hide it on the larger scale devices. So selecting the bar, and just do a display none. So this way it's not going to display on the wider screens. And now we're going to use the media screen and set the maximum device size. And what this will do is this is going to provide another set of styling parameters and properties that we can use. So in this side, this is where we want to have the responsive menu, and this is where we're going to be adding in the responsive menu content. So this is only going to be for the smaller screens. And then you can also add in like a body there, so we can see a background color. So whenever the body, whenever it's on a small scale, and I usually like to do that while I'm developing so that I can see the difference between the scaling there. I do have the page zoomed in, so I'm going to zoom it back out to 100%. And this way when we adjust the size of the screen, so we're going to have the full menu when it's white, and then we're going to have it as a collapsed menu, the responsive menu, when it's going to be the aqua color. and then I'm going to be removing that once I'm finished developing. So that can just see where I've got the breakpoint and where I have the changes. So let's start working on the navigation bar. So selecting the nav, and we're going to using the display flex for this. So set that up as main container is display flex, and then use the justify content, which allows us to add some spacing between it. So we'll add space between that content. So that pulls it over to the right hand side, and then add in the align items, and this is where we just add the align items, and that will center the logo. Set the position to be relative, and then add in a little bit of padding around the navigation bar as well. So do about 20 pixels of padding, and we'll set its own background color and match it with what we've got for the footer. So there's our basic navigation bar. So now let's select the logo and make some updates to the logo. So we want to update the hyperlink in the logo. So selecting the logo and selecting the anchor tag within the logo. And here we can set the color so that we can actually see the link there. So that turns it to white. And we'll make the font size a little bit bigger so it's a little bit easier to see. And we'll do the 1.5 REM, and then text decoration, and set that to be none. So we don't want the underline there. So there's our logo content setup. Let's move on to select the nav, and then we're going to select the element with the menu class. And the menu class, we're going to do a display of flex. So that will align them horizontally. So there we've got the items there aligned horizontally. We do have to get rid of the default styling for the unordered list. So we need to remove those out for the list items. So let's take care of that next, where we've got the nav, and then the main element class and the list item. And just get rid of the margins. And we can have the margins on the left and the right of 10 pixels. Get rid of the margin for the top and the bottom. For the nav menu list item for the anchor tag, so let's update the color because we actually can't see the text there. So I'll update the color and remove out the text decoration so there's no underline. So there we can see it a little bit better. And let's apply some additional updates to the navigation, the menu, the element with the menu class, and do a list style. And actually we already have the menu class there, so we can add that all in under the one selection there. So list style, and do a none. So that's going to get rid of the default bullet points that we had within the menu. We want to remove the margin from it. So this is going to set the margin to 0. So it removes the default margin within the unordered list. And then the padding, also set that to 0. And this is going to remove the default padding within the unordered list. So that will just stack the elements nice and neatly there. So now when we expand, there's our menu on the larger screens. And we want to toggle it on the smaller screens. So we don't want it to be stacked horizontally. And we want to show the option to toggle the menu. So now we're at the point where we can start setting that up. So this is going to be on the smaller screen, so we'll be able to see the effects, the different changes. We're selecting the navigation menu bar, and we want to do a display none of it. So it's going to hide the main navigation bar. Let's select the flex direction and set that up as column. And we want to add in the option for the toggle menu, and we also want to add in the option for the menu icons. So those are going to be clickable, and then JavaScript's going to be able to handle that. So for right now, let's remove out the display none, and we'll show how we want to display the navigation bar. So this is going to be when it's untoggled. So we're displaying it as a column, so we're stacking it vertically. Let's set the position as absolute, so that will set it within the absolute position, top 60 pixels. And this is so that the menu is always in the same place. So it doesn't matter where we've moved the screen to. it will always be on the top of the menu. And you need to have this because if you're hiding the menu, if it's scrolling with the page, then it's going to provide a really bad experience for users on mobile devices. So this is just giving it a fixed position at the top there. Let's set a background color for this, and we're going to set it the same as we've got for the footer and the back of the header. And then we want to use the Z index, which allow us to stack it on top of the other elements. So that will hide the other elements underneath. So that gives us the menu. Let's update the menu and add in the list item. So we're going to set this to width of 100%. So this will allow us to have the list items all the way across. And then for the nav menu, the list item, the text within the list item, so those are all the anchor text. We're going to add some padding around it, so 10 pixels, add some color for it. So this is just to make sure. I know it is already white, but just in case, so just to make sure it is. And this one is adding it in as a block, so that's going to allow it to take the full width of the element area that's allowed, and that will allow us to have that full area across the top there. We want to have the menu toggle to display. So now that we're done with the way that we want our menu to show, let's do a display none, and that will allow us to toggle it whenever we've got the button there to click it. So this is the responsive effect for the menu. So menu, and we're selecting the class menu toggle and do a display block. So that will show that menu option there where we can do the menu toggle. So that's going to show this element where we were hiding it. And then let's update the navigation menu toggle and all of the spans. So this will give that hamburger icon look. So display block for that. Do a width of 30 pixels. You can also find icons for this, but this is just a quick way to do it with styling, so you don't have to add in any additional icons. And setting it up, making sure that it's a white color so that we can see it. And margin, so 5 pixels, and 0 for top and bottom. So there's our navigation toggle menu. And when we go in the larger screens, that's going to disappear. So in smaller screens, we have this icon here, and we want to make this clickable, and that's all going to be done with JavaScript so that we can click, have it hide and open the menu. So going down to where we have the JavaScript, selecting the element, so let's select the menu, and we'll give it a variable name there using the document and query selector to select the element. So just as you did with the styling, we're selecting the element by its class name. So it's going to be menu toggle. And then we need to select the menu itself and use the document query selector and select the element with a class of menu. So it's going to select both of those elements within the JavaScript. And then we can select that menu toggle element and add an event listener. So this is going to allow us to add that event where we're able to click the event and then have some type of action take place within that. And selecting the menu toggle. And then for the class list, we want to toggle, and this is a really great option because it allows us to toggle a class to set it active. And then here we can also have that as well. So class list toggle and then active. So this is going to allow us to add a class to both of those whenever it gets clicked. And right now we don't have much happening with the JavaScript, but just to illustrate what is happening here. So we'll select the navigation bar there, and we've got the menu toggle and then the menu area as well. And let's shrink it down. And then when we click it, so we're adding in that active class. If you see the active class has been added, it's been removed. So that's what the JavaScript is doing, where it's allowing us to add and remove that active class. And because we're removing and adding the active class, that's going to give us an option to do some more effects with the active class. So let's select, and we'll do a selection of that element, go back into the styling, and this is where the effect is going to come in, where we've got the navigation, toggle menu, active, the span, and we're going to transform this so that we have a little bit of effects there happening by 45 degrees. So that will move that sideways and give this effect whenever it gets clicked. We're also going to add in another transform for the third one. So I'm going to just copy this code here that I have, and the nth type, so the third element, and we're going to transform that negative 45 degrees. So that will make it look like there's this type of interesting effect happening within the elements. And then selecting both of those, so that's the nav, I know it's fairly long there, and then we comma separate it out to select both of them and apply the properties to both. And this is where we're going to position it to absolute. So when it clicks, it goes into an X format. So it does this transformation and this toggling when it gets clicked to go into an X format. And that's also what we can use then to close the menu when it gets clicked again. So we've got it X, close, and open and close. So for the first element there, we just want to remove it. So we're going to just set its opacity. So that's the first one. And that's why there's a line under the X. So opacity, and set that opacity to 0 so it's not visible. So we're reusing those spans and we're transforming it. And then we want to apply a little bit of styling. So select the nav and then the menu, toggle, active, and the menu. So we're doing it for both of those elements, and we'll do a display of flex for that. So that will make it have this type of effect there where we see the navigation menu, and then we can click it and we can hide it. And then that's always gonna, so it doesn't matter if it's open. Once we resize it and we've got the larger size, that menu is going to just remain open just as it did. So that's how you can create a responsive navigation bar. And now I'm going to get rid of the background color, so we don't need that anymore. And there we go. We've got our basic website that's got a responsive navigation bar, and that's all done with styling. And then you can create these as separate style sheets. So that is if you have a multiple page website, then that's a good way to go, where you can save that. Just do a new file. It's going to call it style.css. And then within the style, we do a link. Select the link, so the rel attribute, and specifies the relationship between the documents, and we want to link it to a style sheet. So it's the relationship, it's style sheet, and then the href is going to be the location of that file. And just save that. So there's our styling back. And then also the JavaScript. So it's always good practice, and especially if you've got a navigation menu to other pages. So again, we'll save that and select the source, and there's our source for the page. So that should bring us back to our JavaScript functionality. And then you could use this now as a template for your website. You can populate the main content area, save it as separate pages, and that way you can have that same navigation menu across all of your pages on your website the same way.